I didn't come out being like, hey, I'm the Mellow guy. It's just like all of a sudden it was funny. I started being like headlines about like Mellow superstar, like things like, and all my friends would be like, what, you? Like, you're the most competitive guy I know. You
right.
know?
I am here with the great Jack Johnson, and you're here with an incredible new documentary, Surf Film Music. And I assume that's is that the importance of those things in your life in that order?
That's a good point. I didn't think about it like that. Probably surf film music. No, I'd probably go surf music film if it was order of importance. But it's sort of the order that it happened in my life. So it ended up being the title. It was kind of a working title, and then it ended up being the name.
I could tell watching you in this movie that you hadn't thought about some of this stuff for a long time. And in this film, you're going back to your earliest days as a musician, and before that, when you were making surf movies, when you were just flat out surfing. You've lived many lives, and I think you were looking back to the first of them and kind of like marveling at it, listening to old cassette tapes. Was it an intense experience for you to go through all that?
I think it would have been more intense if I actually thought that we were making a film in the beginning. And it really was, it was a bunch of friends deciding we were going to put out these old surf films again. If I rewind all the way back, we put them out on VHS originally.
Yeah.
Back in the late 90s, right? 99 or so, I think, was the first one came out. And then they went to DVD. And then right around my music career was starting, we kind of missed the step of getting them online. And so here we are 25 years later thinking, oh, we should get these online finally. So that was the beginning, was just starting to dig through the old footage and thinking maybe we should find the stuff we didn't use for some extra kind of stuff. And we decided we were going to make this little thing about making those films. And honestly, the story just kept coming out. It was interesting as we kind of got into looking at it. I realized it was all the friendships were that was the part that was like the collaboration of it all. That was the part that was really interesting for me to look at. And then I guess if I look at like the surf films being this part, the story on this side and the story on this side kept stretching out, and it ended up being a feature-length film. And it was kind of a trip for me that ended up happening, but that's how it went.
It's crazy because you are going back to these 4-track tapes, the earliest stuff you ever recorded. And what was it like to hear that stuff, especially the stuff at the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, even that, so this is the first time I'm really even thinking about how why the film got made, and it's a trip for me because the cassette tapes, that's how we recorded the theme song for these old surf movies. That was the recording. So as I was looking for the recordings of the surf movies, I started seeing like, oh, there's my high school band. I got to listen to this. So I started popping them all in and started kind of hearing all those old 4-track recordings. And it's really fun to listen through. Most of them are like 3 friends in a dorm room with like bongos and guitars, and they're like almost unlistenable, it's like really funny. And then every once in a while I'd find a little thing and I started making notes about like, I'll go back and, get this one at some point. And so the story, even just listening to those of sort of like between 1995 to 99 in my life, like just hearing that story through the tapes was really kind of fun for me.
It's funny, in your old Rolling Stone feature, Eddie Vedder, your pal, said that at first he wanted to buy you a distortion pedal. Yeah. It took him a while to adjust to the mellowness of your music, which is funny because then he went off and made the Into the Wild soundtrack, which is very much in your vein.
I told him to make that. No, I just kidding.
But it's funny. Did he know that you started out with a punk band? I mean, your fans know that. It's a piece of Jack Johnson trivia, but it was crazy to hear that.
Yeah, I don't know if Eddie ever knew that. I mean, going back to that part of the question, but I think for me, that was the reason that I even wanted to have a band. I can remember, and I've been able to share this with Ian MacKay, which is really nice, is that there was a day we were driving to school, and there's this one little section on the way to school where the radio goes out, and there was 2 stations that we got on that side of the island. There was Radio Free Hawaii and KTUH, which were both great stations. They were really eclectic. And this one morning, we were driving and Waiting Room came on, the bass line, and I just remember we actually pulled off the road because we didn't want to go by that one spot where the station would go out. And we sat there, and there was that morning where we heard Fugazi that we're like, we need to make a band.
Wow.
And it was like, so for us, I think we heard something that was like full of energy, but it felt like I think if 4 of us get in a garage, we could make something that feels this kind of energy, you know? And so that was like, yeah, that was the beginning, was just trying to make Minor Threat and Fugazi, like as much as we could sound like that. That was the goal.
What was the name of that band again?
Limber Chicken.
Would the Jack Johnson of Limber Chicken be surprised to hear your actual catalog?
Probably. I mean, me and Limber Chicken would have never dreamed that I was going to be sitting here doing a Rolling Stone interview. You know what I mean? It's like, it's pretty crazy to think. But I was learning Cat Stevens songs and Bob Marley songs at the same time. It was like acoustic guitar, and then when I was with my friends, it was plugging in and trying to. It was punk rock, but it was also like Jimi Hendrix and Black Sabbath and like stuff from the '60s too. That we were covering all of it, you know, just trying our best.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that Gen X has in common is like even the punk rock Gen X had a love for classic rock.
Oh yeah,
like it's as much part of the Gen X thing as the baby boomers. So that was a big part of your thing.
Yeah, it's weird. We were talking about last night. Everybody in my band just getting back together and talking about. It's weird to think that when we were in 1993, like seniors in high school, the stuff that we were listening to of like Hendrix and all that in the late '60s would be the same thing as people listening to like grunge or what, you know, '90s music now. The time difference was the same. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, like the Led Zeppelin stuff was 20 years old or less. It was fairly new. It was like listening. Yeah, it's like listening to 2006 music now. It's crazy, crazy. But your acoustic things seem to be also a product of. You said that on surf trips you had a lot of times to play guitar, so it was sort of like literally like a campfire thing or like just a hanging out thing. You were making music really socially, I think, early on.
Yeah, so yeah, socially is a good way to put it. I mean, I was playing songs, but so was everybody else in the room, you know. And there was, I was doing a lot of Pavement covers, those same like Fugazi songs or Minor Threat. They like a well-written song translates even if you put it on acoustic guitar. And so I was playing a lot of those songs, and then during the day as we would see things and be traveling, kind of like I think the beginning of some of me trying to write songs was really just trying to make my friends laugh like that night.
Yeah.
Because there's a song called Holes to Heaven, for instance, where it says something about the officials were quite friendly once we bribed them with our sweet talk and our cigarettes and booze. And that was because earlier that day, we had this pack of cigarettes that we were supposed to get at the airport and some Johnny Walker Red on the surf trip. And we didn't really, the captain told us, like, when you're at the airport, pick up this stuff. And then we got to this port, and we literally had to bribe these officials to get through this one port. And so that night, just sitting around, like, playing that song, I never thought it'd be on a record, but it was just kind of making my friends laugh about something that happened earlier that day. So going back to what you're saying, it was very social. It was just kind of, I don't know, all of us sitting around and making songs at night, you know.
It's so interesting because those things in the title really are very intertwined for you, or were intertwined. The surfing, the movies, the music, and the surfing really came first. There's amazing footage of you as like a little kid trying to climb onto a surfboard, and it was so core. Your dad taught you, your whole family was doing it. It was just taken for granted that you were going to get on that surfboard. Like you were put on that surfboard. Like, it wasn't really even your choice at the beginning. Yeah.
I just saw that footage recently. That was a trip because kind of what I was talking about, like the making the surf films that's what we started making this little thing about. And then we found this footage of being a teenager and surfing Pipeline, because Pipeline's sort of where we all sort of met, the surf spot that we were all trying to learn to surf. And then one of my uncles told me, hey, I got all this footage that I've never transferred. And when I finally got all the Super 8 footage transferred, there's literally the first steps I'm taking. My mom catches me. Like our generation, we don't usually have that footage, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden I saw this stuff, and my brothers, like, I'm in diapers and they're putting me on the surfboard and all that stuff. It's like, I mean, my mind was blown when I saw that. And it kind of just was that part of the story, you know, we kept finding this stuff as we started digging. And so, yeah, I guess just back to what you're saying now, it was weird for me to see all that footage. I didn't even know I had that.
It really was sort of predestined, though. I mean, like, you were going to get on that surfboard.
The surfing, yeah, for sure. I feel lucky because I have my own kids now, and they all love surfing. And, yeah, I can't remember even beginning. It's just like, I talk about it in the film. Some of my earliest memories are being on the front of my dad's board, because I think those sort of, I'll even say kind of traumatic. I mean, there's times where it was beautiful, like I talk about in the film, like seeing the face of the wave forming. But there was times where we would eat it and I'd be underwater and my dad would be like, I could feel him pulling me up and those kind of things. So those are the experiences you're going to kind of hold on to. But I can't remember when they began, because now I know from being a dad, definitely some questionable fathering of like having my little daughter up on the front of the board, you know, and like just holding her and taking off on waves. And sometimes you push it and you realize like, oh, I shouldn't have taken this one. And you're like underwater trying to hold on to them. And that was fun, right? Like trying to make them just like not hate surfing. But anyways, yeah. So the love of surfing, it's sort of just, it's really natural for me. It's kind of the only thing I've been doing since the very beginning.
And you were really good. You were in these competitions. You know, very famously, you had this huge accident. And you've said that the narrative that led to your quitting the idea of being a professional surfer and going to music, it's actually not that clean. You actually had already decided that you weren't really going to be a professional surfer before that. Is that, how do you kind of see that?
Yeah, it's interesting because it definitely, I guess the older you get and you start looking back at these things, I think I accepted a little more that it was a pretty big turning point in my life.
Okay, so that is the narrative, really, yeah.
Well, I think I just wanted to get back in the water, but there was this time where I had to, you know, it was a pretty bad concussion and it was like I lost my teeth and everything. So there was this time where I couldn't surf, and my mom was really sweet. My mom and dad would get me all these tablature books, Jimi Hendrix. I got like a stack of Jimi Hendrix guitar books, and that's when I was just kind of hiding out in the bedroom and I started playing a lot. So probably if I didn't have that couple of months where I just couldn't surf and I dug into music, I may have never kind of found the same love that I did for playing guitar. But the whole time I just wanted to get back in the water at that age, you know. It's like music was sort of just a distraction for my mind for a little while for that. And then so anyways, it was a funny time. Like I had to we had to wait for this one tooth to die all the way and make sure, and then they did a root canal and put a fake one on. So during that time, like for like a month, I didn't have teeth, and you're going to high school, you're showing up. So I would take surf wax, and I would make this little fake tooth thing and I would put it in the morning.
Oh my God.
It wasn't like all day, it was just when I'd show up, like that first time when you're waving everybody walking into school, like I had these little fake surf wax tooth I put in there, and I don't know, just that memory popped in. But it was a funny time. It was definitely like life-changing at that point.
You wrote, I believe that the song Drink the Water is about that experience.
Yeah, that was one of the first songs I really tried writing. And there was like little versions of it for a few years that I wouldn't show people. I was always kind of trying to write songs when I was like senior in high school and freshman in college. And some of the lyrics just kept sticking around. I sort of wrote the song later, but some of the original lyrics were during that high school, like end of high school time. I was trying to write that.
So was that experience, you know, and I think the best sense of it I get really is from the lyrics to that song. Was that a traumatic experience for you?
Yeah, very much so. Pipeline's a pretty intense wave, you know. It's like for a lot of reasons, just the physics of what happens to that wave, how strong the water is moving over the reef and everything. And then you got the crowd, like the amount of people that are trying to take off, and it literally is like a little 10-foot circle, you could say, where there's everybody fighting to get this one spot. And there's no real set rules of there's a kind of a hierarchy at every surf spot. And anyways, there's like the intensity of that. So yeah, when that accident happened right there at this place, it's so watched and everything. And as like a teenager, you're really kind of trying to find your place in that lineup and everything, you know. It was definitely, it was traumatic for sure.
And yet it never scared you off from surfing.
No, it's because there's like so many parts of surfing, you know what I mean? There's surfing knee-high waves with all your friends and your family and that kind of stuff. And then there's the thing of trying to push yourself and kind of find your edge of like what you can handle. Not even like taking off on big waves, but just being out in the ocean when it's really big. There's a lot of things to consider with currents and just like understanding if the swell is getting bigger or if it's dropping and what you're getting yourself into. And so there's parts of it that I kind of love looking back, where I realize you sort of, you'd break your leash or you'd break your board on a really big day, and you'd have to think, okay, there's nobody else going to get me in right now. I got to figure out how I'm going to get back to the beach. And those type of challenges were sort of nice to have. You get into them gradually. It's not like all of a sudden you're just out in big surf. Sometimes you end up in a situation where you're out of your comfort zone. But that's where you learn a lot, you know. And so, yeah, I look back at that part of surfing. I definitely learned a lot about what I could handle through surfing.
You were a math major to start, or at least you were taking a lot of math
Taking
classes.
a lot of math classes. I hadn't declared.
What were you thinking?
Well, good question. I did okay in math in high school, and it was one of those things where I kind of thought, this is something I could handle. I don't know why I was studying it. But then, yeah, my wife, who's over here somewhere, she was the one that told me, like, I don't know if you should really follow that one. Because, yeah, I started with, like, maybe a B and then, like, a C, and then it just kept going down. There was a class called Transition to Higher Mathematics, I remember, and I didn't make that transition. That was the class where I was like, okay, I think I'm done with this.
And you saw this, like, student film festival, and you were like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it was so cool. I just remember still the feeling, you know, that feeling, like just being a music fan when you walk into like a really great festival or like a great club and it's just got like a certain vibe. It was one of those ones where I remember walking in, it was a bunch of kids in their early 20s and there was films playing that were these made on 60 millimeter or Super 8 up on the screen, and there was live bands playing to it because the film's silent. So the whole idea is real, R-E-E-L, real loud. And it was silent films with live bands. And I remember talking to there was a couple of guys, this guy, Ronan P. Nagel and Paul Starkman. They were like the two guys that were older that I met that kind of took me in the film department. I started doing projects with them. And I remember them saying, this is what I've been working on all quarter. And just thinking like, wait, hold on, this is an option. So I just switched to film major pretty much the next day.
And the first music that people besides your friends heard from you was in the soundtracks to these movies, right? You kind of and were you into that idea, or was it like your friends being like, oh, put the songs in there, or how did you kind of see it?
A little bit of both. I was definitely into it as far as like watching the films. Kind of goes back to that Real Loud thing where it was watching a scene and then trying to put sort of chord progressions behind it. I loved doing that, but I think I was a little reluctant to put it out. I mean, in hindsight, it sounds funny now because it all felt really natural once we did, but it definitely took my group of friends being like, no, it's better with it. Like, let's not try to find another song for this part. Let's use your little acoustic doodle there. It's rad, you know? And so, yeah, lucky to have friends around that were supportive. Just whether it was like hearing the songs with lyrics or just hearing those kind of first attempts at scoring a film, to be with a group of friends that were like, no, this is it, let's do that, you know, and kind of give you confidence. That was huge, yeah, to have supportive friends.
The movie's also really like a love story. It really gets into how you and your wife got together, and you've been together a long time. And it also feels like she was kind of your first audience. You said you were there were only a few people you could play in front of, and she was one of them. And it also seemed like, as much as you were first trying to make your friends laugh, it also seemed like you were trying to get them across to her, your songs.
Yeah, well, definitely. Like, so at that time, everybody had their little CD, what do you call it? Like
Discman?
Their thing you'd unzip and it had all your discs.
Oh yeah, your CD wallet. I think they called it.
Yeah,
like CD book. Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you first start to date, when we were like 18 years old, you'd kind of show each other your music collection, and we were into a lot. It was like a Venn diagram. And she was a math major, so she always talks about Venn diagrams too. But it's like the stuff that overlapped, but then she turned me on to like the Pixies and I don't know, like My Bloody Valentine. And she had like all this stuff that was a little cooler than my collection, you know? And so whenever I'd kind of write a song and share it with her, she was always my sounding board, and I could just almost tell from her reaction whether things were working or not. Yeah, I remember one time like I had this little 4-track recorder. I don't even know if I've shared this story with her in a long time, but I remember this day where I was closing my eyes and I was recording something and I was really into it. And when I opened my eyes, she was in the doorway looking at me, and I was so embarrassed because I think I was like really getting into it. And she said, no, I love it. You know, like and it just made me feel like, okay, this is okay. It was like a crossing like a little threshold, whereas, okay, she digs when I get into it, you know what I mean? And so anyways, I always felt really comfortable to share her stuff, even when I was 18, 19. So she's kind of like always been my editor in a way, you know what I mean? And even when I'm almost done with a record, but there's a lot of gaps to fill, it's conversations about, okay, well, what is this song like what does it mean to you, and me asking her, what do you hear when you hear it, without the context of what I'm thinking, and we'll kind of finish a lot of the songs together, and so yeah, it's just the whole journey has been a partnership with her, and we kind of tried to capture that in the film too.
Yeah, it was pretty moving. It actually was. I didn't expect that part of it.
Yeah, right on.
And when you're writing songs, and when you're kind of shooting for the stars, if you had to name maybe 3 or 4 of the in your canon, like the 3 or 4 greatest songs ever made, what would be your picks?
Oh, that's a good question. I can remember there's Greg Brown would be one of them. As far as a songwriter, for me, like hearing his lyrics, there's a line he has in a song. He said, let me see if I can think of the words. It's like, the whole world exploded into knickknacks and memories, eagle and bear trinkets. I don't think it's so good. Oh man, what am I trying to say? Well, it's a messed up world, but I love it anyway. And the way he delivers that, the line about it's a messed up world, but I love it anyway, it kind of gave me the idea of that's what I want my songs to feel like. I want to be able to point out what's wrong with the world, but I also want to have hope in the songs or feel some kind of optimism. So that was a big one for me, like hearing that lyric. I have to go back to Waiting Room, like the energy of that song and the feeling of that song. It's like every time I still hear it, and that's in the film actually, that song, and it was really sweet of Fugazi to let us use that song. I know they don't let their music get used for a lot of stuff, and so it was a real honor they let us use it in the film. That's a big song for me. It's hard when you're just on the spot trying to think of the songs.
That's the challenge. That's the...
Yeah. I don't know. Some of Cat Stevens songs, like those are ones that really, as far as like playing acoustic guitar, that moved me enough to try to find that feeling. I mean, that's when you're a kid first learning, and there's like this feeling where I remember it's almost too simple of a idea to express sometimes, but the trick is just when you write a song, does it make you feel somewhat like those songs that you really loved when you heard them? If you're a music fan and you know the way it feels to be moved by a song, if you're really honest with yourself as you're writing, does that song do something that makes you feel like that, even if it's just a little? Like, you can never make yourself feel the way that the big ones do of other people's songs, but it's kind of that simple. It's like, is this song feel moving? And so anyways, I did 3 songs there for you.
You did 3. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You wrote a beautiful new song called "Hold On to the Light" that's attached to this movie, and it's pretty meaningful, pretty powerful. Tell me about the feeling behind it and how that one came together.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It's one of those songs. I wouldn't have written that song without Hermanos Gutierrez. We did it together, and I'm just a big fan of their music and have been for a while. And I remember like the feeling when I first heard their music, I remember the thought being like, oh, I want to play music with these guys. It sounds like we could make something really nice together. And I thought that for like a year or two. And then I heard through the grapevine that they liked our surf movies and my music too. And so we got a chance to meet, and we started kind of like sending each other our musical ideas and stuff. And so Alejandro sent me this rough idea, and it was one of those nice ones because it kind of tricks you. It's such a beautiful guitar part with a feel and a tone on his guitar that you forget it's only 3 chords, And so on the acoustic guitar, I probably have exhausted those 3 chords, but so I started writing the song over it. That is, it was while we were going through all the footage in the film and all the memories, the love memories and the hurtful ones of like seeing a friend of mine who passed away a couple years ago, one of my closest friends. And so thinking a lot of him, it's about holding on to those kind of memories or holding on to the light from that, but also like thinking of my wife and all the things we've seen together, and she was a close friend of his as well. And so just like, yeah, just keeping everybody by your side that you love, and the ones that are here and the ones that aren't here anymore, like those memories are powerful enough that you feel like they're with you when you share them. Or just part of making this film even is kind of like trying to kind of hold on to some of those memories.
Did that set you off onto what could be another album? Are you working on that now?
You know, we're putting out this, like the soundtrack and a lot of the old 4-track recordings. And so the soundtrack has some original songs with Hermanos Gutierrez, instrumental stuff, and some of the old songs that we did together. And so that's the album we're putting out now. But I never know, like, if I'll make a whole... I kind of always trick myself into thinking that I'm not going to make a whole nother record. I think it's partly because this thing I read Kurt Vonnegut say once, which I thought was really cool, is that every line he writes in his books, he's thinking of one person, that's his sister. And if she would like it, he keeps it. If she doesn't like it, and it's not like he would even show it to her, he would say, it's just like he would know. And then, so I don't know, for me, like writing songs, if I assume it's a record, it's hard for me to write from a pure place, you know, but if I'm having a conversation with a friend and then later that night I want to finish the conversation, that's kind of what songs are for me. Almost going back to that thing I was saying earlier about like trying to make a friend laugh about something we saw earlier in the day. It could be a love song, or it could be, you know, a song, social commentary, whatever it is. It's sort of, they're always finishing conversations for that one person that originally the idea came from or with. And so, yeah, so anyways, when you ask me about a new record, I don't know if I'll do, I'll probably do them, but I usually try to decide once I have enough natural songs around again that it's like, oh yeah, there's a group of songs that could be an album.
It's funny because this goes back to something mentioned in the film, is that when you're having your first meetings with record labels, you'd be like, well, you know, I might put something out and then go surfing and never make an album again. So
well,
you're still threatening that.
I don't think I ever said that. Emmett says I said that,
okay.
But it was definitely, I think it was like my way of trying to control the situation sometimes, because all of a sudden you'd be in a room. I mean, this is kind of there's all these cameras looking at us and stuff, you know, and it's like, this is almost one of those situations that you're like out of your comfort zone. I'd be in a room with a big desk, and when the conversation went well with like an A&R person, they'd usually invite you back, and then all of a sudden there'd be like 3 people in the room, and I didn't know who they all were, but then all of a sudden there'd be a table with like a lot of people, and it felt like it was getting kind of serious, and then they would ask questions like, are you willing to be on the road, you know, this many 100 days out of the year? I think everybody could probably sense that I didn't really seem like a real like a serious touring musician at that point, because I wasn't, you know, I had never even done a tour. And so when they'd ask me those kind of questions, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, do I have to commit to like a certain amount of days and those kind of things? But so I guess it came off like that of I may just go surfing again. I think I wanted to keep making surf films, so I'd always ask them like, would it be okay if I like took off for a few months to go make another surf film during the year, you know? So we had a lot of people kind of turn us down, and then eventually got to make a record.
It's interesting because for all your reputation as like a purportedly chill guy, and you certainly are, but mellow, whatever, the fact is we see from this movie that you had not only ambition, but ambition in like multiple directions. You got so much done. If you arrived on campus, you were going to be in a band within months. Like you were actually like a pretty can-do, hard-driving person.
Sure.
So how do you kind of balance those two sides?
It's funny, like the mellow thing, I honestly think like right now, I'm pretty nervous. Like I think when I get nervous, I like go into this mode where I seem mellow or something, but I'm actually pretty competitive. Like all my friends, yeah, you don't come out, like I didn't come out being like, hey, I'm the mellow guy. It's just like all of a sudden it was funny. I started being like headlines about like mellow superstar, like things like, and all my friends would be like, what, you? Like you're the most competitive guy I know. You
right.
know? And so, and it's true, like none of it happens if you don't have ambition, or like those early days of trying to fill clubs and driving yourself in a van. You know, you wake up, you're so tired, and you like have to drive. You definitely have to want it, and you definitely have to keep trying real hard. And as a band, we felt like a little team. The bass player in my band, I've been really lucky. The same guys are on my very first record. We're having coffee this morning all together still, and we're all still a band. So it's really fun when you've been in situations like where you can be like, remember that one show where like, we have all these memories about like times that people thought there was like a different person on the bill, and like there was nobody in the crowd knew our songs and stuff. And to have those memories with the same people that then you get to go headline a festival. I guess my point is like whether it's going great or there's gigs where it's just like a disaster, when you got the same friends to share all those stories with, you know, it's really nice. So we always kind of, the bass player in the band anyways, Mellow, he used to always kind of compare it. He likes basketball a lot. And so like we were a team, you know, and there's like days where you can tell so-and-so is a little tired, so you got to pick up a little more. And it's like we worked really hard all together to, you know, you're loading your own stuff in every night. And you have to love it. It was like, I look back and I wouldn't have changed any of it. It's hard work to go around and play a club tour, but it's so much fun. Like at that time, you just wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world than doing that, you know. But it definitely, you can't just lay around hoping it all comes. You got to work really hard to get people there every night. And when you're on the stage, like one thing I really learned from touring with Ben Harper actually is just, I'd always hear them as a band come together and share their appreciation that there was a room full of people that were going to be listening to the songs tonight, and like they couldn't do it without that room full of people to be on a tour. So our band kind of adopted that too, and always felt just really lucky to be playing to that room that night, whether it was half full or whatever. It was just, we were playing for those people that night. So I think being present in the place you're playing, whether it's a coffee shop or a festival, that was something we were, you know, lucky to have. Is just always feeling present in the moment when we're playing music.
Is there a song or songs in your catalog that the audience is still dying to hear that you really would like to stop playing or you don't want to play at all?
No, not really. I'm kind of a sucker for like, there's certain songs like we don't rehearse anymore as a band, you know what I mean? Because we don't need to, but they're really fun when there's people that want to hear that song. Kind of goes back to the thing you're saying. It's social for me. It's again, like the bass player would talk about how we're in the service industry, you know, like people, they're coming out to have a good time, and that's what we're there to do, is help people have a good time that night. And so when people want to hear a song, I love playing that song for them, you know, like if people are requesting a song. I can't think of one that I don't like playing. I feel really lucky for them all. It's like there's relationships with certain songs, and there's certain ones I feel so lucky to have, you know, like a song like Better Together. I mean, I remember, it's interesting how if I think about when I was writing that song, some of the love songs, they come kind of easy, and they sort of, you write them sort of quick because they just feel really good and they come out really easy. And then a song like that, like so many people have shared that they've used it at their wedding or like different special days, and it's sort of gained this thing where it's, I just feel lucky to have that song, and I feel like whenever we play it, it's, I don't know, I see people like out in the crowd making out all of a sudden, and it's like, you could tell it means something in their world, and as like a music fan, I know how there's certain songs that mean a lot to me when I hear them, and to have a song that you wrote that you can tell means something, it's like always just, I don't know, it's real flattering for me.
And just finally, I mean, this movie shows, we were saying before we started, I mean, you've had an amazing life so far. What's left in your ambitions?
Nothing.
Like, really?
I'm joking. No,
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but yeah, what's remaining as far as your ambitions? What's left that you want to do? And it could be nothing. I don't know. Just chill.
No, it's a good question. I think there's like a mixture of ambition, like liking to create cool things with friends. And a big part of the film is really about that. It's about making cool stuff with your friends. It kind of begins, part of the beginning is me and a bunch of teenage friends making this surf movie that wasn't very good, but it was like, we had this VHS player, we'd take turns filming each other, and then we'd get two VCRs together, and we'd make this whole movie. I look back at that, and I just so happy that as teenage kids, we decided to try to make something together, because it's really like that little seed where you're like, oh, we can make something. Then you start making something else, and the next thing you know, you kind of get to do that. And so, like I was saying, like having coffee with my friends this morning, the guys in the band, and just talking about certain songs we're excited to play, or like, oh, we should cover that song, that'd be fun. And that gets me excited. Like I don't have like an ambition for necessarily a certain project, but just to keep making cool stuff with friends, like that's always the fun part, and I'm excited to keep doing that. So wherever that leads.
Well, the movie is SURFILMUSIC, and it's very much worth seeing, a beautiful documentary. And Jack Johnson, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For joining us.
Oh, sorry.
Jack Johnson, thank you for joining us at the Rolling Stone studio live.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
South by Southwest.
Really cool, exciting.